The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Bock score from Nedick's at the Old Garden on 49th Street. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. We have a great panel of folks tonight. We have Al Blumkin is here.
Hello, gentlemen.
How are you, Alan? Reigning in New York, I'm guessing. George Case the Third. How are you, George?
I'm just fine, and we had rain here in Philly and a lot of flooding, as a matter of fact. So not as much as the Carolinas, but a lot of water on the roads.
Are you closer to Philadelphia than anything else?
Yeah, I'm about 30 miles north of Philly, but they had even tornado warnings out there a little while ago. So, you know, it doesn't usually ever happen here where we are, but, you know, occasionally you do get some problems.
Yeah. We also have an expat with us, David Hubler.
Hello, good evening. Bonjour from French Canada.
That's it.
Back from Canada, they let you back in the country with no problem.
Oh, well, we did have to go through customs, yes.
Yeah, you got to have a passport now, I think. Right?
Yes, you need a passport, right. Exactly, yeah.
It used to just be in the old days, you just only had your driver's license, that's all you needed.
That's right.
Now, yeah. Right, now you need a passport.
Well,
the Canadians don't want us coming in, that's what it is.
Yeah, pretty soon you're going to need credentials to get into Canada, as opposed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's introduce the man himself, and I will start off by asking Mr. Bock, what is the score?
Well, guys, I decided, since we're in the final week of the regular baseball season, to write about not the winners, because we'll have plenty of that in the playoffs, but the losers, teams that really struggled through a tough summer. And nobody has struggled more than the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles are on pace to have the third poorest winning percentage in Major League Baseball history. It's pretty impressive, I thought. Well over 100 losses, and they just took the team apart in midseason, traded a lot of pieces away, and they got a lot of players back, but you never know. I mean, these guys, are they prospects or are they suspects? So I wrote about the Orioles, and I feel sorry for them because they have a great logo. But that was my thought for this week. The Royals also, Kansas City Royals, are also over 100 losses, and we have a half a dozen other teams that are pushing 100. The Reds, the Cincinnati Reds, the Chicago White Sox, Detroit Tigers, San Diego Padres. It goes on and on. There's been a lot of bad baseball this summer, unfortunately, for those cities. So you hear a lot about the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Cubs and the Brewers and the Dodgers and the Rockies and so forth. But you take a moment and just shed a tear for these other teams, what I call the losers. So that's what I thought about. That's what I wrote about this week, and that's what I was thinking about this week.
Great topic.
Well, it is a great topic, and the fact is, and we've all talked about it, Alan and David, you know, the Major League Baseball, I think their overall attendance is down like 6.5% or whatever it is, and, you know, you got the Red Sox and the Dodgers and the Yankees. I mean, they prop it up, but when you get down to the bottom, it's tough, and, you know, the Orioles, you know, oh, how the mighty have fallen, because at one time they were the class of baseball, and now, you know, they can barely get out of their own way.
Well, somebody posted that the Marlins attendance drop was more than their actual attendance for the year.
Wow. It's interesting, though, and I pointed this out in my column. It's easy to turn. Well, it's not easy, but turnarounds often occur very quickly. The Atlanta Braves are the champions of the National League East Division. The Braves last season lost 90 games. They were 72-90, and all of a sudden they're in first place. So it's possible with the right player moves and with the right kids coming up to really turn it around rather quickly. And I also pointed out, I said to you earlier that the Orioles were on pace to have the third poorest winning percentage in Major League history. The other two teams in front of them, if you want to call it in front of them, were the Detroit Tigers, who in 2003 went on a tear and really threatened the record of my beloved New York Mets, and they finished well under 300. And of course, the Mets of 1962, who won only 40 of 161 games, 160 games, 2 games were rained out. They have the record. They're the best. They're the worst. But both of those teams, both Detroit and the Mets, within a half a dozen or so years, were in the World Series. So it's possible to turn it around. And I would advise the fans of these cities that we mentioned before to hang in there, and hopefully there's a better tomorrow for them.
Hey, remember where the Mets were in '68?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if that was the fastest turnaround ever, but it certainly was one of them. I mean, from the worst year of all to the World Series in 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years.
Yeah.
Well, I want to bring up another team since World War II. The only other team to finish 70 games under 500 were the immortal 1952 Pirates, who won 42 and lost 112. But
hey,
that was under the old
homage
schedule.
To the 2018 Rays and the A's, who basically, just were Cinderella teams. So that's what makes baseball nice and exciting, is that there is a chance. The Pirates.
Well, you have to have an ownership and the player personnel people that know what they're doing.
In my mind, Tampa is one of the most remarkable stories of this season, Tampa Bay Rays.
Absolutely.
They traded off a lot of their talent. They have the lowest payroll in baseball, something over $60 million. $60 million is like the outfield for the Yankees, and they nearly made the playoffs. I mean, they were in the playoff race until yesterday. They were not going to make it, but the fact of the matter is they're well over 500. And they did very well. Of course, they have a pitcher named Blake Snell, who's a 21-game winner. He's going to win the Cy Young Award, or he should win the Cy Young Award. So that goes a long way to being successful. But you have to split them and their manager. Kevin Cash should be the manager of the year, in my opinion, because he did an awful lot with an awful little.
What about the Oakland A's?
The Oakland A's have a lot of good players.
Yeah, but they were never anywhere for the last 2 years.
That's
so
true.
All of a sudden, 2 months into this season, they burst
So how do you
out
explain
completely.
that? How do you explain that? I'll leave it open to the panel. What turns it around like that so quickly, so suddenly?
Well, I heard an interview with Billy Beane about the Oakland A's. He can't explain it, because their pitching was so decimated by injuries twice. They had to sign Jackson as a pitcher in AAA just to fill out the roster, and he turns out to come up and give them a hell of a year. So Billy Beane can't explain it. He does say that a lot of it is just there's so much talent out there that it takes good scouting to just cherry pick the organizations that don't have enough room. I'll give you an example of this guy on the A's, Laureano, 5-tool player in center field, fast as hell, has got a great arm, great on defense, hitting the ball. He was lost in Houston. So if you look at it, if the good teams like Tampa are scouting the players to take in return for the high-priced, aging veterans, and it becomes a scouting game, so to speak. Well,
you get general managers that make and owners that make very poor decisions on the bad teams. For example, on Baltimore, before this winter they signed a pitcher, free agent pitcher by the name of Andrew Kashner, who was 48 and 69 in his career and had never had a winning season. But he was left-handed, so they signed him, put him in the rotation. The guy's something like 4-15. And I put down on one of the sites when they mentioned this, that I put down and says, how they ever decided to give this guy this kind of contract is ridiculous. And I said they deserve everything they won't get from him. And same thing
Orioles have been very, very stingy with that contract.
Yeah, and same thing with the Giants and Jeff Samardzija. You take one look at Samardzija's record, and says, why are they paying him $60 million over 4 years? The guy's been horrible. All of a sudden you think they throw money at some of these guys. All of a sudden they're going to be good.
Well, going back to the Orioles, as Hal was talking about, Chris Davis signed a 7-year contract for $161 million. He's not hitting 200 this year.
He won't.
He's just totally lost.
And they play him every day.
Yeah,
they play him every day.
He'll
have a high total of strikeouts and a little batting average.
Yeah. Well, Showalter thinks he might just snap out of it.
Yeah.
But you see,
when?
In my view,
5 years from now?
I don't know. He's got plenty of time on that contract.
Showalter will be looking for a job in another week.
Teams are much better off, in my opinion, to invest in younger players, and that's what the Orioles have done. They traded, for example, they had Manny Machado. Manny Machado is one of the best players in baseball. He's going to be a free agent, going to get a lot of money this winter. So the Orioles traded him to the Dodgers, and they got 5 players back. Now, I don't know how good these 5 players are. Maybe none of them are any good, but maybe 1 or 2 of them will make the team and be good players. So I think you've got to invest. I think that's the way to go. I think you have to invest in young players. And signing free agents is not a guaranteed road to the top of the standings.
Yeah, but the owners don't sign free agents. The Players Association will start screaming collusion again.
Well, you sign. You don't have to play. You don't have to pay that kind of money, though. You can sign lower level free agents.
But
we're very familiar with that here in New York, where the Mets rarely invest in a lot of money in a free agent, and when they do, it generally blows up in their face. We have an outfielder named I even forget his name. Oh,
Cespedes.
Yoenis Cespedes.
Yeah.
He's got 2 bad ankles. I'm sorry, heels. 2 bad heels were operated on. He missed more than half of this season, probably miss all of next season. He's making a ton of money. David Wright, who signed a big contract, is going to play his last game on Saturday because he's been out for the last 2 years. So you got to be very careful when you invest that kind of money because it could blow up in your face.
One of my friends calls Cespedes the milkman because he's milking the disabled list for the last year and a half.
Well, he's got in my opinion, he's got a lot of dog in him as well. But he's obviously injured. They operated on him. So, I mean, that's not a make-believe story. But what I'm saying is that I think you're better off investing in young players, and the Braves have proved that this year. The Braves have come up with a half a dozen very good, very young players, and they won the division. That's who won the division. Their young players won the division. So
Hal, I agree with you, but the reality of the situation is
free agency. Trout's going to be up with the same dilemma that Baltimore faced with Machado. The Angels have to make a decision. Are you going to build around Trout, or are you going to trade and get something for Trout? What do you guys say about that?
The Angels don't have the capacity to build around people because they also got the Pujols contract for another 3 years, and he's going downhill. The Angels have never, to me, except when they got lucky in 2002, they never have had the ability to sustain a contending team.
Okay. George,
talent like Trout, you can't allow to walk away, though. You just can't.
But they're going to let Harper walk away. Washington's going to let Harper walk away.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I was going to ask you, David. Maybe not.
Yeah, they're the learners are very clever with these sorts of things. They keep a lot hidden until the time is right. They may give Harper. They have some wonderful young ball players behind him, however, in case they do let him go. I forget his name. He's just a teenager. He's just tearing up the league.
Soto.
Soto.
Yeah, Juan Soto. Yeah. He's terrific. They've also got some other terrific young guys. So we'll see what happens. Harper has been very good at not saying anything about this, and he just went over the 100 mark in RBIs for the first time. So that's another plus in his column. So we'll see. They gave one or two other big contracts to their two starting pitchers, but aside from that, they haven't given any really big contracts.
Strasburg a big contract.
Strasburg and what's his name? Max Scherzer. Got very big contracts, and they both have produced. Max Scherzer, especially. I mean, he's just been a powerhouse of wins over the last 3.5 years.
Yet on the other hand, the Nationals signed Daniel Murphy away from the Mets.
Yeah,
which was one of the many blunders that the Mets have made.
Right.
And Murphy had two terrific seasons. He was hurt earlier this year,
right,
but he came around, and they traded him away because he's going to come up with a contract. He's got a contract here.
Yep.
They just discarded him, and I don't understand that. I mean,
I was very surprised at that too, Hal. I really was.
Maybe they're thinking of bringing him back, like the Yankees did with Chapman.
Yeah, that's a
possibility. They Chapman away, and then they brought him back as a free agent.
And maybe the Mets will bring him back because God knows he's killed them over the last 2 years.
Yes, he has. Yes, but he's been a hitting machine, except for this year after his injury. When he came back, he was not the same Daniel Murphy. But they didn't give him the full season to let him work it out. They traded him, but it's quite possible that they might just bring him back. Although again, they do have some young, good ball players who can play that second base position with a bit more speed and success with the glove. Murphy has never been known as a great glove man.
Yeah, if you guys remember last year's off season, the free agent market was very slow, and there were a number of players who were not signed by the time spring training started. And there was a whole issue of freezing these free agents out, and collusion was starting to rear its ugly head again. So, as much as I agree with Hal on young players, and I think the trend is towards that, if they don't, the teams don't go after some of these veteran free agents, there's going to be hell to pay with the union.
Well, but you got to be selective and you got to be smart.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Who you pursue.
Yeah.
And for example, one of the Mets signed free agents last year. The pitcher who had a terrific second half. He's 35 years old. The left-hander, Vargas, is that his name?
Yeah.
He's been terrible for them. Whatever time he didn't spend on the disabled list, he was pretty awful. Well, why would you sign a guy that age?
The last month or so, he's been doing much, much better.
Well, yeah, but why would you sign a guy that age to a big contract? I just don't see it.
Anymore, yeah.
It's just, I think, and the problem with the Mets, though, my understanding is that their farm system is bereft of any meaningful talent. Now, they brought up a second baseman, McNeil, who's been very good for them.
Who
knows?
An incredible surprise, has been hurt in the minors for the last couple of years, puts it together. He's hitting very good is an understatement. hitting 342, a terrific fielder, really smooth.
Look at the Phillies. They gave Jake Arrieta a big contract. They took him away from the Cubs. They thought they were getting the 2015 Jake Arrieta, who for the last half of the season was unhittable. It's not working out for them.
That's true.
There's a number of teams, especially the teams that perform more poorly, that have big untradeable contracts because their judgment in signing some of these guys to these kinds of contracts was crazy. I mean, the Yankees signed Ellsbury, which was a terrible contract, but they decided that this year that he wasn't going to give them anything, and they decided to eat it.
Well, I'll tell you this.
He's hurt.
This has gone on forever in the history of baseball.
Yeah.
Well before free agency came into baseball, which was in the mid-'70s, well before, like 25 years before, there was a player named Ralph Kiner, and there was a front office guy named Branch Rickey. And Kiner played for the Pirates, and Rickey was the GM. And Kiner had a pretty good year, and the Pirates did not. They finished in last place. And Kiner walked into Rickey's office and demanded a new contract for the next season. And Rickey said, no, we're not going to sign you to this big contract because we finished last with you. We could finish last without you. Well, that's a very sensible standpoint, I thought, on the part of the great Branch Rickey.
At the convention in Pittsburgh, there was a guy who did a whole presentation on the relationship between Kiner and Branch Rickey. And when Branch Rickey went there in 1951, he started unloading veterans because they were, not doing anything with them. And Kiner had such ties to the ownership back then that he would, if he didn't like what Rickey was offering him, the ownership, he'd go to the ownership, and the ownership would give him what he was asking for. So he and Rickey had a very, very contentious relationship from the start. And finally, Rickey was able to. There's a shift in the ownership in 1953. Well, Galbraith took over, and he was able to unload Kiner onto the Cubs.
When I was a kid, 100 years ago, I was a Giants fan. And the Giants players in those days were big sluggers. Johnny Mize, Willard Marshall, Sid Gordon, Walker Cooper. Those were my guys. And now the Giants changed managers, and they brought in a guy named Leo DeRocha. And DeRocha immediately started unloading these big sluggers, stars. They went elsewhere. Gordon was traded to the Braves. Willard Marshall went to the Braves, I believe. Johnny Mize went to the Yankees. Walker Cooper went to the Reds. Oh, they just cleaned house.
The only two position starters that were kept as starters when after DeRocha came in there were Whitey Lockman and Bobby Thompson. He got rid of everyone else.
Got rid of everybody.
Except Rigney became a substitute instead of a regular.
He wanted a younger team. He wanted a faster team.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he won the championship in 1951 and again in 1954 with a younger, quicker team. So, I mean, the big contract, big stars don't always deliver what you want, which is win the pennant. That's what I want to do. I want to finish first. So you got to be selective, and there's got to be a balance, I think.
And some of these teams, the bad teams, are not.
Well, I know.
The agent sells them. The agent sells them a bill of goods on a Jeff Samardzija or an Andrew Kashner, and they give them much more money than they're worth, and they stink, and everybody's surprised.
Well, you got to have a front office and a scouting staff
that knows what they're doing.
That knows what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole secret.
Okay, George, what was scouting like when your dad played, and how big a part did it have in those days in Washington?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just sitting here really interested in all the comments because my thing is the history of the game, and talk about the old days and the way it was 1-year contracts and the great, players. And if the player was getting older, a general manager or president would trade him or try to build it with some young guys. I mean, this has been going on a long time. But, the scouting was something that, the major league scouts, they used to be out, what they call beating the bushes, and that's what they did. And I'm not sure how much is done anymore, with all the sabermetrics and all the computer analysis and everything that they're doing. But, there's a lot of young talent, and if you have a good scouting system and a good farm system, you're going to develop that talent. I think that's what teams have to do. I agree with what Hal and Alan and David talking about. I mean, build your team from the ground up, build the foundation. The way it is today, you got some of these guys, we've talked about it before, these big contract guys, they're going to be retired. You're paying them for what they did a couple of years ago, not what they're going to do. And in a few years, they're going to be retired, still collecting money.
It's true.
Hey, by the way, I didn't neglect to hear the smile. I heard a smile in David Hubler's voice when Hal Bock talked about the Giants unloading Johnny Mize.
Yeah, well, he was a big help to the Yankees, especially.
He sure was.
In their pennant drive.
Big John.
So he couldn't play full time anymore.
Johnny Mize was my first hero. In 1947, Johnny Mize hit 51 home runs, and I was just swept away by that. The fact that he hit all those home runs. He came within 9 homers of the record at the time, which was Babe Ruth's 60 home runs.
And he struck out about 40 times.
That same year, Ralph Kiner also hit 51 home runs. So the home run was around back then as well. It's not just a modern development. But when the Giants unloaded him, it broke my heart. It really did.
When Mize hit the 51 home runs, he struck out 42 times.
Mize, you're talking?
Yeah, that's an amazing stat.
That's the only time a 50 home run hitter struck out fewer times than the number of home runs he hit.
Yeah, I mean, the guys today, they're up in the 200s with stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely. By the way, George Case III posted a picture the other day on Facebook of a Cleveland outfield. His father, George Case II, was in left field. The center fielder was a fellow named Bob Lemon, who they decided wasn't a very good center fielder, but he could be a pretty good pitcher. And Bob Lemon wound up in the Hall of Fame as a pitcher. So I thought that picture was terrific.
Yeah, how I had that picture, and because that was where when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I remember my dad talking about it. He said, Bob had a heck of an arm, but he just wasn't a good hitter. So Boudreau, made the decision he was going to convert him into a full-time starting pitcher, and that's where that came from. I mean, everybody talks about the greatness of Bob Lemon, which is justified. He was a wonderful pitcher. But he did start his, that 46 season as the center fielder in Cleveland.
Yeah, in fact, he was the center fielder when the fellow pitched the second no-hitter that season. Lemon was the center fielder. This came up.
Yeah, well, you know what, Alan? When you mentioned that the feller pitched the no-hitter at Yankee Stadium on April 30th in 46.
That was the no-hitter,
My dad was the left fielder.
Yeah.
And Lemon, I think, was playing center. Now, right after that is when Boudreau made the decision, because Bob, I think he was like 2 or 3 for 25 or 30. I mean, he was very anemic with his batting average. So Boudreau made the decision because it's such a great arm that he was going to make him into a full-time pitcher.
Yeah, this came up in a thread on Facebook that I was on yesterday, and a couple of people got certain things wrong, and I on fellas no hitters, so I had to correct it. In this particular site, they love me because I'm the only one over 40. And also, David mentioned Chris Davis before on the Orioles.
Yeah.
I read a piece that he has a Bobby Bonilla contract. They're going to be paying him until 2037.
Oh, that's good.
Up until 2032, it's a certain amount, and then it shrinks to a certain amount.
Right.
From 2033 to 2037.
I think without knowing, I think I take the shrunken amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for me.
The shrunken amount will be a lot of money anyhow.
Who agrees to contracts like this?
Lemon wasn't the only position player to transfer to pitching. Bucky Walters, who pitched for the Reds, was also, I think he was a third baseman when he came up.
Yeah.
And transferred to the pitching for the Reds. So that's happened before. It's
a fellow podcaster on this network named Skip Lockwood, who was the closer of the Mets,
right,
for 2 or 3 years, comes up originally as a bonus boy third baseman with the Kansas City A's, spends a year on the bench with them as a third baseman. Had Bando in the organization, and he just didn't have the stick for it, but he spent a year, got some at-bats, and became a pitcher, converted. Charlie Finley helped convert him into a pitcher. And he's got some great things to say about Charlie as a human. We've dispelled on this network a lot that was said about Charlie Finley and written about Charlie Finley, and we've confirmed a lot of the things that weren't all that positive about Charlie Finley as well. So that was my point about two position athletes. He was.
There was another one. The Yankees had an outfielder named Johnny Lindell.
Yeah.
In the 40s, and he became a pitcher as well. Not as effective by any means as Bob Lemon and even Skip Lockwood. But he went to the mound. I saw him coming out of the bullpen.
Lindell went to the Phillies, if I'm not mistaken.
He was at the Pirates and then the Phillies, and he was a knuckleballer.
Right.
He had a personal catcher named Mike Sandlock, and he was very ineffective in the majors as a pitcher. He was very good in the postseason, but he was very effective. It was only the 1 year, 1953, because in 54, the Phillies had both of them, and they released them very early.
Wow, Alan, you have...
Those guys I know like the back of my hand.
More minutia.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like...
Certain guys...
You could have written the baseball card, the backs of the baseball cards on the side.
I offered to do that once. I don't know if you guys remember a player by the name of Hal Jeffcoat on the Cubs.
Of course.
I remember.
Who was an outfielder who couldn't hit, and they made him into a pitcher.
Yes.
I don't remember him pitching.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him as an outfielder.
Yeah, Jim Brosnan was once traded for him.
Okay.
When Brosnan went to the...
Can I tell you guys one old story? And I don't
sure.
want to bring up about my dad, but this is a little bit about... It was sort of on the subject we're talking about. My dad went to a tryout in front of Connie Mack in 1936. He went there as a pitcher. And Mr. Mack saw my dad hit and run, and he said to my father, he said, "Son, if you want to make a career out of baseball, you got to decide you want to become an outfielder with your speed and not a pitcher." So, my dad originally went there, thought he could make it as a pitcher, and Connie Mack, told him the real story was that his speed and his ability to hit the ball could be used in the outfield every day rather than every 4 days as a pitcher.
Yeah, that happened in 1919 with a guy named Babe Ruth.
Yeah, I'd say that was a pretty good move that was made with regards to Babe. So
speaking of Babe Ruth,
Alan, do you know when Babe Ruth was pitching for the Red Sox, was he also hitting? I mean,
not
he wasn't
until
pitching.
1918.
Was he playing in the
really?
outfield?
Not until 1918 was it really when Ed Barrow took over there.
Right.
That finally started to get him and by 1919 he was playing the outfield and pitching very infrequently.
Yeah, I think he only pitched like 4 or 5 games, right?
But he led the American League in ERA in 1917. He was a 2-time 20-game winner.
Right.
Of course, had that World Series scoreless streak that Whitey Ford broke.
Right.
There's a story in my book, Band, about Dickie Kerr. Dickie Kerr was on the White Sox in 1919, the Black Sox. He did not fix any games. In fact, he won 2 games in that World Series. But when he held out for a contract, Judge Landis banned him from baseball. And he was out of baseball for 3 or 4 years. He was welcomed back finally and became a minor league manager. Now he's managing in the Cardinals organization down in Florida, and he's got a pitcher, a left-handed pitcher, who falls, fielding a bunt, falls on his elbow and dislocates his elbow or dislocates his shoulder or something. And he can't, I mean, in those days, sports medicine was not what it is today.
Right.
And he's not healing. And so he goes to Dickie Kerr and he says, I'm afraid I'm done. I don't think I can play anymore. And Kerr said, well, you know, you're not a bad hitter. Why don't you try the outfield? And that's how the Cardinals wound up with Stan Musial. So he may be one of the more famous pitchers to outfielders that we can we remember.
Yeah, George Sisler came up as a pitcher.
Okay.
Yeah, he once beat Walter Johnson 1-0 in a game. Then he also
Dave Sisler, who was a pitcher.
Yeah, and Dick Sisler was a hitter.
Right.
But the thing is that he showed his ability to hit very well, and they made him into a first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
But Ruth was a
Hank
tremendous.
Hill is the modern guy I was thinking of that made that switch with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
And now you've got Ohtani, on the Angels.
Hey guys.
Yeah, and now the Sports Illustrated dubbed him the next Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
And I mean the guy's only played half a season. That I think it was Verducci in the SI this week because I just picked up a copy to read on the train. But I mean that's so preposterous.
If he pitches, he's going to have Tommy John, so he's not going to pitch, for quite a while.
So he's not the next Babe Ruth. He might be the next Tommy John. I mean, these guys go out on a limb, without really putting any knowledge behind it. I mean, Verducci.
Sometimes it's the headline writer.
Yeah. Well, how many next Mickey Mantles were there? The Yankees would bring up these kids every other year after Mantle retired, and they were always the next Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
None of them ever panned out.
Mercer had a
Bobby Mercer.
Yeah, but not that Roger Repose and Steve Whitaker and Tom Trotwell a few good years before.
Yeah, now what's his name? Jay Buhner.
Yeah. But
he too was the next Mickey Mantle.
During the real bad years for them in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s, they always had these prospects coming up, and they would be the next Mickey Mantle, and they fell a little bit short.
Hey, when I think of Jay Buhner, I think of George Costanza passing away, and George Steinbrenner going to the house, and his father berating Steinbrenner. You traded Jay Buhner?
Yeah, that was a great line, yes. Of course, anybody watching it in rerun now won't know what in the world he was talking about. But it was
famous fleeting, David. Famous fleeting.
Yes, it is. Well, listen, we just mentioned him, and another really good Yankee who also came from Oklahoma, and he died here a couple of years ago.
Bobby Mercer.
Bobby Mercer, yes, you mentioned. Right. Bobby Mercer was also dubbed the next Mickey Mantle.
Bobby Mercer couldn't adjust the Shea Stadium.
That's why
when they moved from Yankee Stadium to Shea Stadium.
Yeah, for just 2 years.
Yeah, he couldn't adjust to it, and they shipped him after, impatient Steinbrenner was. After 74, they shipped him to the Giants straight up for Bobby Bonds.
Yes.
And
hey, guys,
Bobby Bonds they would ship after the next season to the Angels for Mickey Rivers and Figueroa. Bobby Bonds after Bobby Bonds left the Giants, he made the rounds. Yeah.
Oh, everybody wanted Bobby. It was the lyrics of a song, as a matter of fact. Da 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 da, and everybody wanted Bobby Bonds. Hey guys, we talked. It was this very group. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the marketing program that Nike had about Kaepernick, and I read a little blurb how this, for whatever reasons, was the most successful marketing program Nike had in years and years and years. It's worked out for them. George, anything to say about that?
Well, I didn't read that, Ralph, but, I'd be curious how they measured that, whether they measured it on Nike sales or whether they measured it on impressions or viewership or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we used to run an ad campaign in Converse and Nike, and you'd measure the results. You'd have a baseline before the commercial or before the advertising flight, what they used to call them, and then afterwards. So, my opinion, I think it might have been extremely well received, but it's only been a couple of weeks, and I have to doubt that there's been a huge research number with regard to Nike shoe sales as a result of the commercial. That's just my opinion.
Well, sometimes it doesn't translate right away into shoe sales, but it's what they got in attention. I mean, that's been a big ad for them.
Well, no, it has, Ralph, no question. But it's a matter of when companies make investments like that, they want to see the bottom line results. And I mean, I can only tell you that when they got involved with Tiger Woods, they saw the results that it got him into golf. When they did the Michael Jordan whole thing with the Air Jordan, it translated into sales and product demand of the shoe. Now, if it's going to increase Nike's awareness but not translate into sales, you can say, hey, the commercial was great, but it didn't accomplish. Now, I don't know what Nike wanted to accomplish. If they just wanted to accomplish making themselves relevant to what's going on in the world today, then that's fine. But if they said, okay, we're going to invest $3 or $4 million in advertising into Colin Kaepernick, we've got to see a result at the bottom line, which is going to increase
George,
sales.
they got people and publicity from people burning their sneakers on Fifth Avenue.
Sure.
I mean,
hey, it's good publicity. I said it before.
That.
Any publicity, in other words, just like with Trump. I mean, all those stuff that he did, he wasn't paying for those. They were all his rallies and all that stuff, and everybody talking about Trump. Well, in the case of Kaepernick, everybody was talking about Kaepernick. Now, you have to say at the end, okay, are they talking about Kaepernick, or are they talking about Nike, or are they talking about both? Well, what's the bottom line on that? So I think, my opinion, it's still a little bit too early to judge and say, hey, everybody's talking about Kaepernick, but what's it going to do for Nike's bottom line? That's what I have to look at.
Well, that may have just have been an investment on the part of Nike for people to recognize the name Nike, the "Just Do It" slogan, which I think is one of the best that they've ever come up with.
Right.
I think they wanted attention, and they certainly got attention. Publicity is worth a lot of money in these days, and I think I don't know the numbers obviously, but I think they got what they wanted in terms of attention. They got people paying attention and talking about Nike, and I think that's what they wanted.
No, I agree with you, Hal, and I'd mentioned that the other day. That's called brand awareness, and that's what they're shooting for. And if people walk into a store or they see a Nike on a shelf, they might not want to buy a football or baseball or basketball shoe, but they see the swoosh. Just like with Tiger Woods. I mean, every place you go, you're going to see, as you mentioned, Hal, you're going to see Tiger on television. And now that he's winning again, they're going to follow him just the way they did. So, that's part of athletic footwear marketing. They can either do it by specific brand, which is brand awareness, or a specific shoe, like the Air Jordan, or the Dr. J with Converse, or what Adidas is, Adidas is trying to do to compete when they're spending $100,000 on a kid to go to Louisville, and that blows up in their face. But that was what that was going to be a Nike. I mean, that was going to be an Adidas school, and if they made the Final Four, the kids are going to see those Adidas 3 stripes being worn by that basketball team.
So it's a guessing game, really, isn't it?
It is. No question.
Money, and
that's why
that it comes back.
No, you do, and that's why companies are spending a lot of money in marketing and research and doing all that kind of stuff, and they're paying executives a lot of money, but they make calculated decisions. I can tell you how they're doing it. They sit there in a meeting and they're looking at it and say, okay, we're going to focus. What are we going to do? We're going to come up, and now they're talking about Kaepernick, and somebody probably at the meeting said, you know what? Let's build an ad campaign around Colin Kaepernick. And they probably will go around the room. They're going to get yays or nays. They're going to run it by Phil Knight or who's ever running Nike now, and he's going to put his blessing on it. And then they're going to spend X amount of dollars in that advertising campaign. So you're seeing an advertising campaign, but just think about how many costs are involved in running those commercials on network television. The costs are huge. And I mean, if you take a Super Bowl, I think last year it was a couple $1 million for a 30-second spot on the Super Bowl because they knew they were going to get X amount of eyeballs to watch that. And that's how they judge how they're going to build those campaigns around either a particular product or a particular athlete.
Hey guys, great show. How Bock, announce what we have next week. I'm very excited.
Oh, we have a special show near and dear to the hearts of Ralph and myself. We are both Giant fans back in the 50s. And in 1951, we had the miracle of Coogan's Bluff when Bobby Thompson hit the home run that won the pennant against the hated Dodgers. And that anniversary is coming up October 3rd. So our show on October 2nd will focus on that. And the last surviving player from that Miracle Giants team, Willie Mays. So that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Wow.
Okay, I've done a lot of
that should be a great show, Al.
Yeah, I've done a lot of reading and research.
And Ralph,
on
that's a terrific topic. Wonderful.
Well,
and Willie may be with us, right? Is that a possibility?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
It's an impossibility.
Okay.
We came very close.
Good luck with that one.
Well, all the other players are impossibilities too. So
much more of an impossibility.
That's true.
It's all relative. Alles is relative.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here's to you, Buck. I hope you make it till next week. Buck is like 87 years old.
Yep, that's right.
That's very scary to me. I too got to watch Willie Mays. I watched the Giants in the Polo Grounds. My grandfather took me before they called Willie up and after they called Willie up. And next week we'll talk about the reconfiguration of the Giant team when they called Willie up. And my grandfather would sit in the right field grandstands with me, and he'd say things like, hit them where they ain't. That's what.
Was your grandfather Willie Keeler?
Well, Wee Willie Keeler.
Wee Willie Keeler, that's right.
He quote Wee Willie Keeler, and it was great. The baseball is parents and grandparents passing it on, sitting there. We'll talk about your dad and how he passed the game on to you, Hal Bock, and I look forward to that one. So, Al, would you tell us when we'll be back? We'll be back next week. When?
Same bad time, same bad channel.
Good. Love hearing it. Thank you,
That's
David
from the old
Butler.
Batman show from the 60s.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Hal Bock, Alan Blumkin, George Case III, and David Hubler. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all at the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Thanks for listening, everybody. Adios. Be back.
Good night.
Bye-bye, everybody. Good night.
This has been a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.